Welcome to the 13th installment of The Smartest People in the Room. If you've been following this series, you understand what we are doing, celebrating incredibly smart, accomplished music industry executives, and also very special rooms, as in music venues. Today, I am thrilled to say I have hit it out of the park on both counts. Before we get started, let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, I would like you to feel very comfortable introducing yourselves in the chat room or chat function below. And if you want to ask questions of Portia and Cameo, please feel free to post them there. All three of us will be kind of taking a look at that, and we will gladly get to as many of those as we possibly can. Secondly, I want to thank all of our sponsors who, without their financial support, we couldn't do what we do. First Horizon Bank, Bufkin Baker, the Fairlane Hotel, Core Power Yoga, Create Tennessee and the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Four Roses Bourbon, Moo TV, Jive Printworks, Project Music and the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, and also Organics, which is a high-end brand of CBD products. Comes in handy during these COVID times. Today, I am pleased to be broadcasting my portion of the program from one of Nashville's most iconic and important live music venues, the Exit Inn. If you've ever been here, you understand what the backdrop behind me looks like. This is the iconic wall that lists just a fraction of all the great acts that have performed here, including many A-list global superstars such as REM, Neil Young, Tom Petty, Talking Heads, the Black Crowes, Keith Urban, Kings of Leon, Paramore, Cage the Elephant, Hozier, Margo Price, and hundreds of others. The Exit Inn was opened in the fall of 1971 by two friends, Brew Reynolds and Owsley Minear, who longed for a local place to enjoy the type of music that they did. They called it Exit Inn because the entrance was in the back, and they chose the moniker Nashville's Music Forum. Exit Inn's first show ever, believe it or not, was Jimmy Buffett, who walked in off the street, guitar in hand, looking for a place to play. Next year is to be the club's 50th anniversary, and a beautiful coffee table style book is underway, but all other plans are on hold. What was planned to be a year of celebrating the club is now completely in question. The reality is Exit Inn may not see her 50th anniversary at all. Navigating challenges presented by consolidation within the industry and redevelopment of the Rock Block neighborhood here in Nashville, the Exit Inn was endangered pre-COVID, which some have called the Great Accelerator. The club's current owner, Chris Cobb, is doing all he can to ensure a future for Exit Inn, from working at the federal, state, and local levels to ensuring the passing of the legislation that will provide financial aid, to hosting streaming concerts and filmings at the club, to expanding the merch line. Hopefully a combination of these efforts ensure the Exit Inn lives into the future as Nashville's legendary club and music forum. You can learn more about this movement on change.org and sign the petition to help Chris save this venue from redevelopment, as well as support during COVID. While we're at it, venues and promoters from around the country are banding together to preserve the ecosystem of independent live music. And it's very easy to join by clicking on the NEVAassociation.org website there on the screen. NEVA launched the Save Our Stages campaign on social media. It has a simple form letter on their website that anyone can customize to send to their lawmakers in Congress. It's free, it's easy, and it's effective. Now, let's get down to our program. I am pleased today to introduce two of my favorite heroes in the music industry. These two have been shattering glass ceilings in this industry for years, and both are tireless advocates for equality and anti-discrimination movements throughout society at large. Today's interviewer is Cameo Carlson. Cameo is the president of M Theory Nashville, a services company providing global marketing and strategic support for managers that represent artists from Casey Musgraves to Tyler Childers and Trace Adkins. Before opening the Nashville office in January of 2017, Cameo's industry background spanned a broad spectrum of industry sectors, genres, and locations, with work experience across radio, DSPs, record labels, and management. Cameo was the head of digital business development for Borman Entertainment, where she was responsible for directing digital marketing strategies for Keith Urban, Alison Krauss, Lady Antebellum, and many others. Prior to moving to Nashville in 2011, she was Executive Vice President of Universal Motown and Republic Records in New York City. Her primary role at the label was digital marketing and mobile sales for a roster that included Amy Winehouse, Lil Wayne, and Jack Johnson. In September 2008, Cameo was named one of the top mobile executives by Billboard magazine for her work at UMG. As well as being part of the Academy of Country Music's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force and board member of Music Biz, Cameo also created both the Nashville Music Equality Group and the mentoring group Digital Divas to help young women in the Nashville music industry further their careers and knowledge of the intersection of music and technology. Joining Cameo today is another one of my heroes, Dr. Portia Sabin. Many of you know her as the president of the Music Business Association, but that's just the tip of the iceberg regarding her resume and accomplishments throughout the industry. While working on her PhD at Columbia University, she played drums, recorded and toured with New York City band The Hissy Fits. She founded Shot Clock Management in 2004 and ran the legendary independent label Kill Rock Stars for 13 years. She is the host of a radio show and podcast about the music business called The Future of What. Portia is a former board member of the Pacific Northwest chapter of the Recording Academy, the RIAA, and the American Association of Independent Music, A2IM. On a personal level, and though I seldom speak publicly about specific searches that I conduct in the industry, I am very proud of the fact that I led the search that resulted in Portia landing in the role as president of the Music Business Association. She was a great hire and is doing fantastic work leading the organization through this COVID mess. I can't wait to see what she and her team can do once they are no longer shackled with COVID. It's going to be awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome these two rock stars into today's version of The Smartest People in the Room. Take it away.
Thanks, Tom. That was quite an intro.
Tom.
We went through everything.
Wow, really?
Portia, so we're good.
We can just be done at this point. See ya.
So
I really feel like after that intro, I should be interviewing you. I really feel like this is
like I have nothing to talk about now. Like we just went through it all, but I think you're gonna love this, Portia. So I don't think anybody knows this, but other than the Nashville industry and some weird sort of like places where we've intersected, Portia and I both went to this tiny little hippie liberal college together in the middle of Iowa, and called Grinnell College, which was what, 1,600 students or something like that.
I think it was 1,200 when we were there.
Yeah. So Portia and I were laughing that like we brushed our hair today and we look really nice. This was when we met.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we totally both got the memo on the late 80s hair on that one, didn't we?
We really did.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I know, and it's super pixelated, but it made me so happy.
Thank you for finding that. That's incredible.
Is that amazing?
Happy.
Yeah. You're welcome. It also shows how old we are though. So we've known each other for 30 years.
Yeah.
Something like that, which is crazy because we're like 35. So I don't know.
Clearly. Yeah, we went to college early. We were geniuses.
We were. And how many presidents has that college like spit out? At least 2 now, right? From
at least 2.
Our class alone.
Yeah, exactly. I see Nora Block and Toby Holmes in the chat. So
oh my God, stop it.
Grinnellians.
Toby, hi, Nora. This makes me so happy. This is going to be this like weird intersection of our lives.
Sorry guys. If you wanted to hear about music stuff, forget it. We're talking about.
No, because our college is basically a cult, so just have to sort of like deal with that piece of it. Okay, but music for both of us wound up starting there inadvertently, right? So let's talk about your storied beginning at KDIC. Well, actually for you, it was prior to that, right? Like KDIC was step 2. You had a band when you were in high school.
Well, I didn't have a band. I wanted to be in a band when I was in high school. I started, I took up the bass at age 14, electric bass. I went to Manny's Music on 46th Street in New York, and I bought a bass and a little amp and walked home with them. And my little friend, John Bowie, he carried, I think I don't remember what he was carrying, but as we passed this guy sitting on the street, he said, "Why don't you help your mother?" So we're the same age in the same class, and I was so tall when I was 14 that they thought I was John's mother. And John has now gone on, by the way, to become a TV star. So it shows how that works out.
Amazing. Why bass, Portia, of all the things that like 14-year-olds do?
Well, because I wanted to have something to talk to John Taylor about when I finally met him. I figured if we did the same thing, then we would have something to talk about.
Yep, of course. I mean,
Of course.
and how many Duranis were like having that conversation with John? Probably not many. So you were like,
yes, in my
have
14-year-old
you
mind.
ever gotten to have that conversation with him though? This is important.
No, I've never met him. And I have a friend who interviewed Duran Duran for, an interesting, good, serious publication. And she said it was the most surreal experience in the whole world. It took place like in a hotel room. They came in like royalty. She said it was like she could barely get a word out. She was so just starstruck and blown away. I think they might be the only people in the music industry that I would actually be like really freaked out to meet still.
Yeah.
Because at this point, this is our lives. So we're just like, whatever, you're an artist, I love your work, but you're just a person.
I think
don't know if I could do
longevity in this business though requires that you still have at least one person that you feel that way about. Because we all get started in this because we love music and we love artists. We don't get started in it because we want to like have titles and do marketing. Like that's boring.
Yeah.
So you can remember that moment, whoever it is, everybody has one that would freak them out. Like that. I think that's how you keep going.
And actually, this is living in Nashville now. I feel like my life has weirdly come full circle because my first, like after my new wave phase, I got into more, indie rock and became more, I would only talk to people who understood, who knew who Pere Ubu were and stuff like that. And my favorite artist was Robin Hitchcock. And so now, like, 40 years later or something, the first time I saw Robin Hitchcock was November of 1986. And I met him for the first time, like 10 years ago. And I ended up, in the last few years, I've interviewed him like 3 or 4 times. And he lives in East Nashville now. And we're like pen pals. So, I have his email and I like email him every now and then. And he emails me back. So Robin Hitchcock knows who I am. And honestly, that's like, I feel like I could just die.
I know.
That's all I wanted.
And I think it's that passion piece, right? Like that's what got you started. So take us through, because truly, as much as the smartest people in the room title, when you put that on your socials, it's so embarrassing, honestly.
Yeah.
However, Dr. Portia, are not many PhDs in the music industry. So I know we're going to talk about everything because we're so smart that obviously we're going to like unseat the patriarchy in the next hour and figure all this out. But we'll save that for like the last 15 minutes. I want to know how you get from doctor, New York City to music industry. How do you do that?
Okay, well, it was
because you have a crazy path.
I fell in love with music when I was 10. I bought my first album at 10. It was J. Giles Band, Freeze Frame on vinyl. And nobody ever, I've never met anyone else that was their first album. So I think that's weird to begin with. I was always crazy about music. Like I said, I wanted to play bass so I could talk to John Taylor. By the time I started playing bass at 14, I was kind of too old. The boys had already been playing for years. And so by the time I got to high school, I couldn't find anyone to play with me. It was partially because I was embarrassed. I didn't have the confidence at 14 to walk into a room full of boys who've been playing since they were 11 and say, hey, you want someone who totally can't play bass to play with you? But by the time I became, older and gained much more confidence, like the minute I walked into Grinnell, that was the first thing I did was say, hey, who wants to play with me? I can kind of play. And because it didn't matter, I realized like, it doesn't matter if you can play, it's your, you have to get there somehow. And actually that's how I ended up becoming a drummer, because it turned out at Grinnell, there was a drum room, which my friend Tamara Ooms told me my senior year. She's like, there's a drum room here. You can pay $100 and you can use it for the whole year. And I was like, oh, and I ran over there. I threw down my $100. I took one lesson. And the next day I got into a band with 4 dudes. And it was a Pixies cover band, and I'd had one drum lesson. And it was like the rest was history, because I just was like, oh, the drums are my instrument. This is what I was born to play. Like, I'm going to do it. And by that time I was, 20, and I was like, F everybody. Like, I'll totally do this for the rest of my life if,
Right. Right.
no
And
matter
so
what.
how psyched were the parents when you get your degree and then you have decided that you're going to be in a band?
Well, exactly. And that's how, so I was in a band in Grinnell called the Shepherd Kings, and we moved to Minneapolis after we graduated to make it in the music business. Cause in 1993, that's when
right.
like Soul Asylum and, there were all these bands that were getting signed out of Minneapolis. And of course we didn't make it in the music industry. In fact, we broke up after 6 months, and it was all very sad. So I moved back to New York City. I moved into my mom's house, like that I'd grown up in, and my mom's apartment, and with Jason Rutherford, class of 93. And I immediately got into a band using the Village Voice classified ads, because of course this was pre-internet. We didn't have all the fancy technology that kids have today. And it was an all-girl band, and I was in that band for 4 years. And like 15 minutes after I and I realized that I had to tell my mother something, like what was I doing with my life? Because I was a Grinnell College graduate living in Manhattan, temping and playing in a band at night. And I was like, I got to tell my mother I'm doing something. And so when I had been living in Minneapolis, I'd met somebody who said, you should really think about this anthropology program at Columbia. So I walked into Columbia, and this is a true story. I walked into the chair of the department's office, and I was like, I hear this program is really good. And he was like, well, you seem nice. You should put in an application. And literally a month later, I was accepted to Columbia University in a PhD program with no master's at the age of 24. I was 10 years younger than everybody else in my class. Everyone else had a master's. They just looked at me like I was an alien. I had no business there at all. It was crazy.
That's actually insane, Portia.
Yeah, right? That's insane. And then I stayed and got the PhD, which is even more insane.
Well, yeah, of course, because you're not a quitter. And when you tell your
I'm not a quitter. I went to Grinnell.
Exactly. And when you tell your parents that's what you're doing with your life, then you
got to do it.
That.
Exactly.
Okay, so you became a doctor of anthropology because you didn't want to tell your parents that you wanted to be in a rock band.
That is correct. Okay. And I was in a PhD program for 9 years. It took me 9 years to get my PhD.
Well, yeah, because you're like touring the world and shit.
I played in a band. We made records. We went on tour. Like, I was living a complete rock lifestyle. I was up till 4 a.m. And then I like had a 3-day-a-week temp job, and I had this, and I was in this PhD program. But I was in the PhD program 5 years longer than I needed to be, because Columbia requires 2 foreign languages for a PhD. And I had passed my German exam, and I couldn't pass the French exam. And I swear to God, it took me 5 years to pass the French exam. It was horrendous.
So that was the only thing holding you up? Had you already done your dissertation at that point?
That was the only thing that what made it so that I couldn't continue. Like, I was ABD except for, all but dissertation, but then I had to pass my French exam. It took forever.
That's nuts. That is nuts.
Yeah, it was crazy. Anyway, so how did we get from there? So music.
Right. So in the middle of all of this, though, is 9 years where you're in school, but you're also doing this parallel life in music industry.
Right. And I was playing this band, and, we started to get a little notoriety, and we did some touring, and we got a song on the radio, and, it was a good, those halcyon days. It was fun. I'm really glad I did that. And then my band broke up because that's another, multiple hour thing. There were fist fights, there was punching, there was blood, and I quit because I was like, oh no, I'm not in band with people where, people punch each other out. That's just
the Go-Go's.
I was totally the Go-Go's. I was like, I have an actual ceiling, and that is the ceiling. Like, when people are punching each other out, I'm out. But the funny thing is, the punching happened on the set of a Levi's ad that we were shooting for Interview magazine. We were one of the up and coming bands of 2001. And we were in there with this band called The Gossip, this rap group called Cannibal Ox, several other bands that I can't remember, but anyway, so we were like on the set, like we were like making it, you know what I mean? Like we were like poised, and I was like, nope, that's it, I'm done. So anyway, I walked away, and that at that point I was like, oh, you know, now I have a little bit of knowledge. I'd like to share the knowledge. So I started managing some of my friends' bands. So that's really what happened, was I transitioned into the business part. I'd always been the drummer who isn't the drummer who like passes out and has to be carried out of the venue. I'm the drummer who like makes sure that we have, you know, the money in a safe place and we know where the driving directions for tomorrow, like all that. I was that person. So I started managing some bands, and I started managing that band, The Gossip, who had been on that photo shoot with us for Levi's. And I had lived, when I was at Grinnell, I had done Grinnell in London. So I had lived in England, and I'd gone out to the dance clubs every night and the rock shows every night. And one of the things I knew from living in England was that DJs play different music than they do in America. Like in American dance clubs, it's dance music. But in the British dance clubs, it was very often regular music that you hear on the radio. There was a lot of crossover. And I really thought that The Gossip had the potential to be a huge hit in the clubs in England. So we started going to England in 2006. And in March of 2007, they went gold and in England. So that was like, then all of a sudden it's like, I signed them to a record deal with Sony. I signed them to a publishing deal with Chrysalis. Like things got really real.
Well, I feel like that was the next time that or maybe the first time that I realized that you were in the music industry, where our paths like started to kind of come back in this weird way. Cause I could be mistaken. I think we did a single of the week with The Gossip at iTunes. Did we not?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. It was one of the first ones we did.
Yeah, that must have been when we like finally realized that the other one was in the music industry.
Yes. Yes. Because for the weird cult that it is, when you're talking pre-internet and Facebook days, like nobody knew what the hell was going on with anybody else.
Yeah, except I ran into Sam Perlman in a club one time in New York when I was playing in bands, and he was like managing some band that had some buzz. And it's so funny to like, I'm so glad I had that in my life to like have been in the band part of it, because I just remember thinking, oh my God, Sam Perlman is the coolest guy I've ever known in my whole life. And oh my God, he's a manager. And like, oh, you know, it just seemed like stars, you know, and it still seems, I mean, Sam Perlman is a great guy, but he's out of the music business and we're still in it.
I know, this is true. So you're managing The Gossip.
Yeah.
And running Kill Rock Stars.
Oh yeah. In the meantime, I married the guy who started Kill Rock Stars, right? Like years before. We've been together forever. We got married in 2004. And in 2006, he decided he wanted to do something different. And he got a job at Nonesuch Records in New York. And he asked me if I would take over the label and basically shut it down or run it as a catalog label. And at the same time, I'd finished my PhD and I'd gotten a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Washington. So this is 2006. I am living in Olympia, Washington, driving every day to Seattle, which is like an hour and a half drive, and flying once a month to England with the band to do all of our stuff. I had like this completely chaotic, and like, I think back on it and I think of that as like a really calm period of my life, because now I have a child and I'm like, I had no idea, like no way of knowing that I was going to look back on that and be like, wow, that was really relaxed comparatively. But yeah, anyway, so I said, sure, of course I'll take over
where you have to decide between music and academia, right? Because that's the path you're on when you've got a fellowship and a PhD.
Exactly. And honestly, I really hated my fellowship, which I feel bad because my boss was great. But I had learned too much about the dirty, dark side of academia. I didn't like it. And I thought, this isn't what I want. And plus, you know, the music business is so much fun. So I just said, sure, I'll take over a record label. I'll figure it out. Figure out how to do that. So yeah.
But you were originally taking it over to dissolve it.
Right. But unfortunately, he had 27 records on the slate for 2007. So I had to put out 27 records before I could like shut it down. And then by the time I put out 27 records, I was like, hey, this is great. This is fun. And this was really crazy because this was still a physical market. You know, we had iTunes.
Right.
But other than that, it was still a physical marketplace. So you could sell 40,000 copies of a record, you know, and they were real records. So, you know, I'm lucky that I also had that, because now in my job at Music Biz, you know, retailers are such a big part of our membership that it makes me be able to relate to retailers in a very direct way, because I actually, you know, I lived that life where selling records via record stores, indie record stores and chain record stores was the business.
Well, so let's talk about that a little bit, Portia, because I feel like anytime you talk to anyone in the music industry, nobody has a straight path, unless maybe you're an agent and there's like a direct way to get there. But all the rest of us have like these bizarro things that nobody thought would happen, and you go sideways and then you end up over here. But you are in a very unique place where all the different things that you did literally were the training, the real PhD for you to be in this business and be in the position that you're in now, because you are overseeing a trade organization that is responsible for relationships across every different piece of the industry. So what was that? And by the way, super, compared to everything else you did, a little more on that like corporate-y music business side of things versus the like, screw it, we're the indie rock kids, we're gonna do all these things, hipster thing. What was that change? What pushed you there?
Well, I have been on a zillion boards, and I think in particular it was being on the board of A2IM, which is the Indie Label Trade Association. When Slim left the business in 2006, A2IM had just started. So I inherited his board seat. And then I was reelected multiple times and basically served for 12 years with just a couple breaks on that board. So I got to be a part of the development of that organization from the very beginning. And it was an amazing thing to watch a trade association grow, especially in the independent label world where everybody is really independent. You know, I mean, that's like duh. But I remember having conversations with people who are the owners of labels who are very great members of A2IM now about why they should join, and them telling me, oh, we're not joiners. We are independent. We do things by ourselves. And over 12 years, 13 years, I watched that change as the marketplace changed. And as people began to realize we actually are stronger when we're together. And then I was on the board of the RIAA for a couple of years, which is hilarious because I have no connections with major labels whatsoever. We were never distributed by a major, like, I don't know, they just invited me. I love those guys so much, Mitch and Michelle. Oh my gosh, they're the best.
Yes.
And Carrie Sherman. Oh my God, Carrie Sherman called me to ask me if I would be on the board. And I literally thought I was in trouble. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? I didn't want to answer it. I was like, I'm going to let it go to voicemail because I think Carrie Sherman's calling to put me in music biz jail or something. I don't know why I felt that way. Anyway, where was I going? Oh, so I was on a whole bunch of boards, and I've been on a whole bunch of boards for the last 13 years. And I think being on boards, like I was on the WIN board weirdly for a while, and went to meetings in Cannes and various other places. And I think I got really fascinated with that aspect of it, like the sort of behind the scenes, how do people make decisions that affect the whole industry, and how do people do exactly what I said, like become stronger by working together, like make changes that can work together. So when I got this call from Tom, who is, headhunting for this job, I was just like, oh my God, that's like my dream job. That's exactly where I want to be in this industry. Because I feel like I've done a lot of things. I've handled a lot of the different, I've touched a lot of the different pieces, but this is a perfect job for me because I love dealing with the people who come into the room together to make a choice about how we're going to be in the future.
Well, and as one of the board members that you recruited very early when you came in, night and day, just from a leadership perspective and what's important to you. So let's talk about the things that you go into and tackle, right? Because I suspect, and I could be wrong, I suspect that some of those board seats that you have experienced some of the same thing I have, which is we need a token woman of some kind on a board or on a panel or on a whatever. And it's like, okay, it's cool. Like I can come in that role. However, like, I will crush you in the process, right? Because you actually do deserve to be there and you're very smart. You've taken all these things. And the makeup of the board, you change that immediately for what was important for you and how you look at the industry. And I want to talk about that because that's the meat of, sort of your perspective on this and why it's so important that we have you in a leadership role in this industry.
Well, I think honestly, it's because, I think we learn by example, we learn by the people that we respect, seeing how they handle stuff. And so the first year I was on the RIAA board, it was a a room full of like, I don't know, 20 people, and 4 of them were women, and 2 of those women worked for the RIAA. So it was like literally a room full of me, a whole bunch of white guys, and Jeff Harleston. Like, and that was it. And I may be forgetting somebody, so I'm sorry if there were like 1 or 2 other people who are not just white guys. But then the next year, Carrie had stepped down, Mitch and Michelle had stepped into the leadership roles there. And the meeting was in LA during Grammys week. And I went to the hotel room, or the whatever it was. And I remember looking in the door and thinking, oh, I'm in the wrong room. This isn't the RIAA board meeting, because there were so many women and people of color in there. And afterwards, I pinned Michelle down and I said, what did you do? What has happened here? It was literally night and day. And she said, we just contacted all the labels and we said, give us a list of all your people of color and women at the EVP and above rank. And we invited a ton of people. And these are the people that said yes. And I was like, see, that's how you do it. You just do it. Like, when you need to make a change, you just make the change. And when people get into positions of power, thank God, like you and I were lucky to be presidents. It's like, that's what we have to do now at this point, is we just make the change. And, I talked about this in an interview the other day. Someone was saying something about like, why do you think, there are so few women and people of color in positions of power in the music industry? And I was like, patriarchy and racism. Like, that's not a hard question.
Yeah, well,
that's not a gotcha question. That's like, but it's like, once we get into the positions of power, we have to actually make the change. Like, we have to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So that's part of the thing, is I really just wanted to, like, I want that to be an active living thing for music biz, but I also want that to be active and living for the rest of the industry. And I want us to do what we can to make that happen for the rest of this industry, because, it's obviously the time is now, right? We've had many chances in the past, but this is obviously the time. So, we gotta walk the walk.
Well, and it's, I wonder if you feel this too, Portia. When I made the switch to the current job and started the company, part of the thinking was the white dudes over 60 that run the industry, right, and have forever, never go anywhere. And at the time that I made this change, I'm like 45, and I'm thinking, shit, there are not a lot of options for me as a woman, even with this crazy background, to go out and like really go into a senior thing, do something the right way. And, I felt like starting my own thing made a lot more sense. But the only way to unseat all of this is for you and I and everyone else that we can help bring up, and like that are our peers that are women and people of color, is to continue bringing more people up underneath us. Because what else do we do when women over 40, I mean, honestly, you can count on your hand how many of them are in positions of power, right? Like, you don't see the 65-year-old women in the industry the way you see the 65-year-old men.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah. And I think you said this before when we were talking about this. It's like, this industry is so interesting because you don't have to retire. Like, you can just keep doing this. Like, if you're running a major music company, there's no moment where you have to leave. And especially if, it's something where you have, a creative interest in it, because I think a lot of people do have like a lot of creative credibility, and they're great classic A&R guys, whatever, and so they don't have to, like, why do they have to retire? They can just keep going forever.
Well, and also I think there's this sense of like, well, there might be 1 more million out there, and so I just have to kind of like
gotta get that million. Yeah. But I talk all the time about this, but it's really who's in that number 2 slot at this point. Like, if we can't get the white guy at the top to retire, eventually he will. And who's in that number 2 slot? And that's one of the great things about the music business right now, is that we have such a deep bench. We have a way deeper bench than we've ever had in the past. There's so many more women and people of color in the business. And that's another thing we've been doing at Music Biz, is we have an education committee, and we're going to work with a bunch of other organizations to do a ton of outreach to just get in front of young people at the college level and just say, listen, you may not have ever thought you could have a job in the music business, but you can. because here are people who look like you, and here are people who are doing jobs that are completely there for you. I always, it's like, we usually focus on just people in music business programs or music programs, but it's like, go to the people who want to become CPAs and be like, be a music biz CPA. There's just an endless number of jobs for people to do in this industry.
Well, and I think particularly in Nashville, and I wonder if you see it more in Nashville. I definitely did when I came here from New York, and I expected some of that. But I think part of the challenge and disappointment on some level is actively understanding that as a small business owner, in my case, like, there are only so many people that I can bring up underneath me, right? So yeah, I started a mentoring program, and I'm working on some of these other things that are really important to me. But one of the things that's been really disappointing is there is this mentality around here that even though we have to develop the next round of leaders, because those number twos, honestly, Portia, when you're talking about the like 7-year-old white dude, it's another white dude who's just 50, who's been working for that guy for 20 years, right? Like, our second level, there's better representation, but it's certainly not there yet, right? The representation is in the people that do all the damn work and all of the marketing and all, there's much more representation there. It's getting past that, right? And how do we get past that, and how do we help people get past that? And even the universities, I've had a lot of conversations around internships, because I get frustrated by that, the easy thing, because all of us work in an industry that people want to work in, right? If you have an opening, you get 100 applications because people want to work in this industry.
Right.
So people are very used to the like, hey, if you know somebody that's great, send them my way, right? And then we just repeat this pattern of like, most of the people that I probably know probably look like me. And then I'm just like perpetuating this, right? But even at the university level, there are a lot of white universities around here that are giving white intern students opportunities, and those are the applications you get. And it's very easy for people to just be like, oh, I didn't get a lot of applicants, and we have to get more active, and it has to be outside of the music industry, honestly, because seriously, I know we went to a school that didn't have it, whatever. What the hell is a music business degree? What does that mean? Like, I was a political science major. Did I come out like, and I'm a political scientist? Like, that's not a thing that exists. That's not a job.
Right. Yeah, I was an environmental education major at Grinnell, which was an independent major that I made up. And you know what I was qualified for when I graduated? Doing work for the U.S. Park Service, doing interpretive work. That was literally when I typed environmental education into a search engine in 1994, that's what popped up. You could be a park ranger.
Well, that was better than mine, because I was qualified to work at the Limited Express at the mall in Seattle. You chose better than I did.
Well, actually, it was the fact that I could type 60 words a minute that actually got me a job. So it was definitely not being a park ranger.
Well, how do we get proactive, right? How does Music Biz help us? How do we get proactive in helping like develop that second tier, right? Because it's a patience thing at this point, which I've got very little of as I get older. And I really wish that we could just like make sure the number twos were better represented. But it's sort of like, okay, if we have the long view and we do this development, what do we need to do? What are the things we can be doing?
Well, I'll tell you what I've learned so far, because we've been making a big effort at Music Biz to, especially we have some specific programs, like we have Next Gen Now, which is our conference for young professionals, which we just had last week. And then we have Next Gen U, which is our conference for college students, which we're going to have next week. And I urge people to go to the Music Biz website and check those out, because my team has done an amazing job of outreach and just like making, the diversity in the lineups really, really awesome and comprehensive. But in the course of doing this, we've, it's like, one of the things we have to do, and this was what I really hoped to do with Music Biz in the very beginning, and since the second I've gotten here, is get out of our comfort zones and talk to the people that we don't normally talk to. So for example, through a friend, I got hooked up with an independent record label in Atlanta, Georgia, right? Atlanta has an amazing amount of music business, and we did a survey of the conference attendees at Music Biz last year, and less than 1% of them were from Atlanta. and it's like 4 hours from Nashville. So it's like, why, that's a divide that we need to cross, right? So anyway, a friend of mine hooked me up with this label. I ended up talking to a woman at the label. She ended up joining our education committee. She ended up giving me the phone number of a young woman who's in college, who is super connected and like a big influencer in the historically Black colleges and universities like world. And that woman alone has hooked us up with dozens of people. And it's like, that was 2 connections that we needed to make, right? And we made them. And it's like, now we have a conduit, and now we're going to bring those people in, and we're going to say, listen, now we have more opportunities for you. We have more opportunities for us. We're going to bring Atlanta and Nashville together. That's like, but you just have to do it. You know what I mean? You have to find the way in, and you have to be willing to go out of your comfort zone. Like you said, you only have so many jobs. You're probably going to hire someone who looks like you because that's the pool of people that you know. It's you have to step outside of it. And I think right now in America, we are really hearing that loud and clear. Like, this is the clarion call. Get your feet wet. Like, go talk to somebody that you don't necessarily feel comfortable talking to, because you're going to end up making a great connection, and it's going to end up changing everything over the long term. That's my theory.
So Portia, if you weren't the president, right? Because let's say that we've got a lot of people that are in that sort of like middle part of their career, mid piece of their career. How does activism look for them? For us in the just do it, yes, I need to just hire, I need to just look at interns, those kinds of things. What are some of the things that you can do if you're sort of in that in between space?
Like you're a young professional in the industry. I think we talk about this all the time. I mean, you and I have talked about this now multiple times. One of the amazing things about the music business is it's literally all who you know, and not in always in just a creepy way. Like, I got a leg up from my buddy. It's just having a huge network, right? And that's one of the things that's cool about where we are at, you and I, is we're old enough now that we know so many people. I mean, like the people who keep popping up in the chat, we're running our mouths, but otherwise I'd be like, hi, Stacey Turner. Hi, Deborah Newman. Like, I saw Dick Huey said something funny, and I don't have time to, say these things, but like, we know these people because the people who are watching this are our people. Like, this is our world. And it's just a question of always try to have a bigger world, right? I think that's not too much to bite off. I think you can say to yourself, I know 100 people in the music industry. Let's make it 200.
That's really good advice, Portia. Do you want to talk a little bit about music biz a little bit more on sort of like, for people that may not be familiar with all of the programs and services and things that they can participate in, or ways that they can be part of this conversation from whatever company they're in?
Yeah, I mean, music biz, the reason the job was so interesting to me is, this is completely true. I had been to music biz as a panelist like 3 years ago. And then I think I suckered him into getting me to be a panelist again the next year. I can't really remember. I might have just paid my way. I can't remember. But I loved the conference because, one other thing I do is I also have a podcast about the music business called The Future of What. And so I've been talking to people in the music business for the last 6 years for my podcast. And so I always talk on like topical themes and, what's going on and, new tech and new ideas and the MMA and whatever's happening in the world of the industry. And when I first went to Music Biz 3 years ago, I was like, oh my God, this conference was tailor-made for me and I've never heard of it. Like, where did it come from? So the conference I absolutely loved. And then when Tom called and he said, I have a job, it's running Music Biz, I was like, the conference? And he was like, no, there's an organization called the Music Business Association that puts on the conference. And I had no idea. Like, I didn't know about the organization. So when I found out, I was like, oh my God, here's who's like, everyone's on the board. All the major labels, a bunch of retailers, distributors, publishers. I brought you on, I brought Molly Newman from Songtrust, it's all the DSPs. Like, it's basically the one place in the industry where everybody who's got a little piece of, the commerce of recorded music goes. And the conference reflects that, which is great. But my immediate thought when I heard that is, if we have this brain trust of people from every walk of the industry, we need to utilize that. Like, we really need to put that into play. And so this pandemic, while it's been a complete hideous shit show disaster, one of the upsides is that it's actually sort of allowed us to explore that a little bit more. Like, really, what can we do in the industry? So, you know, we've done these Music Biz Lives, which have been like high level keynotes where I interview somebody or multiple people about a certain topic. And then we were doing these virtual events, Next Gen Now. This week was Couch Camp. It still is Couch Camp, which is for the retailers and labels and distributors. And we've got a Metadata Summit coming up, which is a spinoff of the conference. Metadata Summit is always a huge draw. That's going to be an amazing conference. I definitely suggest, if you're a weird data nerd, that you will love that. So go sign up at
We
Music
did
Biz.
a panel that were the ladies of metadata last year, and it was very well attended. Thank you very much.
It was the most popular panel at the entire thing. Honestly, it was. I saw this.
Girl nerds. I
Girl
mean,
nerds.
that's
People
why.
love it. Techie girl nerds.
That's right.
So, you know, it's like, I feel like this is a great time. And so in addition to the things that we're currently doing, you know, we started this diversity and inclusion committee. We started an education committee. We have started this trade association working group where I basically got all, like, the heads of 15 trade associations to come together and have cocktails and talk about, like, what can we do for the industry, as, you know, if we all work together. Really am all about inclusiveness and togetherness, and how are we going to make a difference in our industry by working together. I was really inspired by the passage of the MMA in 2018. You know, the fact that the music industry was able to get together and bury our hatchets and get something done gave me a massive amount of hope. And I really feel like I've been riding that hope for the last few years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of our problems as an industry, and I love that, you know, part of your mission is the inclusion and bringing people together, because part of the problem that we have is that some industry issues are about legislation. And when we do get a chance to talk to our legislators, we're not even on the same page with each other as an industry, right? Like, we're fighting each other in every faction of this industry, so much less like being able to actually move something along. So it's a huge undertaking on the things that are legislative, for sure. Yeah. Okay, sorry. We have been ignoring the chat, and we're not very good at that. We have an actual question, but I don't think it's really for you or I. I feel like our chat people should answer Carla's question on how you decide artists that you sign and what attracts you to an artist.
That's my old job. I used to do that, but I don't do that anymore. And I got to tell you, that's one of my favorite parts of my new job, is that I don't have to answer that question anymore. There's a lot of pressure, honestly, doing A&R. It's a lot of pressure.
Well, and you know, whatever, we can go way down that path, but like the misogyny on the A&R side of this industry in every facet makes me mental. I feel like it's the most obvious piece of it.
It's funny that in the indie world is, I think, has been surprisingly good the last few years. Like, we have really, like, my husband, who took over Kill Rock Stars after I left to run Music Biz, he was out of the industry for 13 years that I ran the label. And when he left, you couldn't sell a female singer-songwriter or a female band leader. And now they're everywhere. Literally everywhere. It's like the hottest thing. And so he was just telling me this morning that that's one of his favorite changes in the industry is to be able, for him to be able to get a demo from a woman with a guitar and be like, I could really sell this. There's an audience for this. There's people who are excited about this. Whereas, you know, he in 1993 and 1994, when he was signing Bikini Kill and Bratmobile, you know, Molly's band Bratmobile, I mean, people would spit on them. You know, people forget that Riot Grrrl was a thing for a reason, you know, because those bands, people were like, what is happening? Those are girls on stage. That's not right. They're supposed to be dudes. And actually, that was at Grinnell. I was in a Riot Grrrl band called Socket Wench. And we totally covered Bikini Kill and Bratmobile songs. So had
That's
that in my
fantastic.
world.
See, that's why we did not go in the same path in college, because you were super cool and
Oh,
like in
hard
your own
to-
princess cool. And I was like the nerd with knee socks and braces, like playing 80s music and Rubik's Cube or some shit. I don't
That's
even,
the great thing about Grinnell, though, Cameo, is that we were both cool at Grinnell.
that is true. That because
Everybody was cool
no
at
one's not cool at Grinnell.
No one was not cool except that one poor guy who was a Republican, and everyone hated him. And I felt really bad for him.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I think, man, that sucked for him. He was brave. He was the bravest guy I ever knew.
That is 100% true. Oh, Randy, that comment on the chicks don't sell ticks pisses me off so much. This, at the end of the day, I feel like all of the issues that we talk about are so easily dismissed by people in the industry by comments like that, right? Like it's, oh, it doesn't sell tickets. It doesn't sell beer, right? That's the country mantra
Yeah.
against women, is that women don't sell beer, which is complete horseshit. And how do you get past that, right? Like you have to be able to combat people with data. It's the only thing that actually can matter, because again, this is not the brightest industry on the planet. And if you actually have your shit together and have some information, like the nerds can battle this. We can battle this in a different way.
Yeah. Well, here we are. We're working every day. We're in the salt mines.
I
So
know.
we want to be surrounded by others, like-minded others. We can
I know.
all make a difference, make a change.
I just really appreciate everything that you've done already for music biz. Because as I had a similar sort of take on what music biz was, which was mostly about the conference, but as an outsider, just seeing how you've changed it and now being part of it, I'm just super grateful. And I'm super grateful for somebody else who is, willing to wave the flag all the time, because it's an exhausting thing to have to be the ones, just as it is in what we're dealing with for people of color trying to have conversations. They shouldn't have to wave their own flag, right? We shouldn't have to wave the flag all the time. But this is an ego-driven business. It's a Peter principle business. It's all about failing up, and we just have to like do better and be smarter and put our heads down and get shit done.
Totally. You're totally right. Tom Truitt put in lightning round, first concert, and what is her superpower to both of you. So my first concert it's actually really timely because the Go-Go's documentary just came out, and it was the Go-Go's with an Excess at Radio City Music Hall. I was
See,
13.
again, you are super cool. I grew up in a lot of places because my dad was in the Navy, but we ended up in Joplin, Missouri when I was 13. And there were no concerts in Joplin, Missouri. I think the first thing I saw in Joplin was like the Sawyer Brown Band or something at Memorial Hall in that town. The first concert I ever went to, though, was the Jackson's Victory Tour at Arrowhead Stadium.
That's amazing.
And I just remember we were in these nosebleed seats and I cried a whole lot. And Eddie Van Halen came up out of the stage for that show. I think it was the kickoff of the tour. And so he came out to play for Beat It, because that tour was equal parts kind of Michael and the brothers.
Yeah.
That was a good one. I know. I want to watch that Go-Go's documentary. Deborah, have you seen it yet, Portia?
I haven't seen it yet. Deborah says says it's wacky. All I can tell you is I watched the Josie and the Pussycats movie with my kid when he was like 5, and like he's laughing and I was like crying all the way through it because I was like, this is like a documentary, motherfuckers. This shit is real. It's like I live this, like the crazy lead singer, the backstage drama. I was like, yeah, I live this.
You need that, right? I feel like we all need battle scars so that we can go into this and like be completely prepared for this, right? This is not an industry for people not willing to fight and not willing to like take a whole lot of shit from people who have no right giving you shit.
That's totally true. And that's kind of, that's probably your superpower, right? The ability to take shit and keep moving and still be a badass.
It is now, but it was all fake, right? Like I was definitely the person who was sort of unconsciously doing the fake it till you make it, because I know people will just laugh. I'm a shy person by nature when I was younger, radio, when I got started in radio, was so hard for me when we had to do remotes. Like, I didn't like being in front of people. I don't like public speaking. Those things are not natural to me. So a lot of it was sort of pretending and doing that like radio thing so that I could take it, right? Because there were plenty of times that I would bite my tongue and like run into the restroom so that I could cry, more out of frustration and anger, not in that, sort of like, you hurt my feelings way, which I think is part of the problem, is that guys see you crying and they think that they hurt your feelings. And it's more like, I'm so angry and frustrated with how stupid this moment is. What's your superpower, Portia? Come on.
I think my superpower is that I have the personality of a golden retriever. So that it means I'm always like moving forward. I'm always really excited about the next thing. And I have no short-term memory whatsoever. So it's like, it's an upside and a downside.
Kind of amazing, yeah.
It's an upside and a downside, but I credit my 20-year marriage to that, exactly. Because it's like, I wake up in the morning, and I'm like, oh, hi, I like you, and I forget everything bad that ever happened.
This is why I love you, Portia. I need to hang out with you more because I have none of that. I am in the place of like, no, absolutely not. My day starts at that. Like, I need some more of that, like, golden retriever. Energy in my life.
It's weird. It's a weird thing to do because I think I used to think that I was really dumb. Like honestly used to think I was really dumb because I'm like, I don't think about the pitfall. Like I don't think about the thing that's coming that could kill you, right? I'm like, like here we go. We're going for a walk. I love a walk,
That really serves you really well in the industry, though.
That's a fake it till you make it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's like I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. I mean, I do now, but I didn't for a long time.
For anybody, and I know a few people have asked, sorry, for anybody that's asked, the podcast is the future of what? It is actually fantastic. And she covers all kinds of things. It's also what I love about Portia. And part of what it almost changed my attitude on music biz that they would hire someone like Portia because Portia is unafraid. Portia she did not change her attitudes, her conversations, anything when she took this job. They had to mold around to who she is. And I think that's amazing because you talk about all kinds of shit on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
And where did the name come from? Will asked about that too. Is it?
Oh, it's an Unwound album. The Future of What?
Okay, there you go.
I asked the band if I could use it and they said yes. So that's nice.
That's amazing. Of course you did.
But that's like part of that golden
you got to walk in and not have to give up any piece of who you are.
Well, the funny thing is, Cameo, like I thought about giving up stuff for a minute, right? I thought about it. Like, for example, anyone who's ever gotten an email from me knows that I don't use capital letters in my emails. And I started that a million years ago, and I don't remember why. I think I saw somebody who sent me an email in all lowercase, and I thought it looked cool. So I was like, oh, I want to do that too. And now it's been, 100 years. So it's like, I just never thought of it. And I thought, like, when I got to music biz, I was like, do I need to start using capital letters so that people will take me seriously in the music industry? And then I was like, I'm 49 years old. Hell no, they can just take my lowercase and live with it. So if you get an email from me, it's going to be in lowercase.
That is amazing. Deborah asked what your biggest challenge was taking over music biz.
What's my biggest? I can't really, I would say it has to be the pandemic and the fact that we had a $1.5 million conference budgeted in our budget that didn't happen. So, so now I have to run an organization with $1.5 million that didn't come in, right? So that would be the challenge. The upside, but it's like, other than that, like, glaring problem, it's been fantastic. My staff is absolutely amazing. They are the best people. I love them to death. They work so hard. They're so smart. They're so adaptable. We were super on the same page from like the minute I got there. I just love them to death. And they've been so great in this pivot that we're doing. They've just been incredible. So, even though, it's a pandemic and we don't know when we're going to be able to see each other in person ever again, and we don't know when we're going to be able to ever have our convention again. Other than that, it's been amazing and totally fantastic every minute. So the challenges have just been, you know, like the same challenge that the rest of us are all facing. Like we're all in this terrible situation in the world. But other than that, I can't say that I have had, you know, major challenges.
So Portia, any final thoughts or notes on sort of things we didn't talk about? I mean, you and I could just sit here and shoot the shit all day. So.
Well, I just want to thank everybody who came and watched us shoot the shit. I really appreciate you guys. And Tracy Gershon says, our panels have been great. Thank you so much for that, Tracy. We've really been trying to make everything that Music Biz puts out really great. So please keep coming and you know, joining us. And Cameo, I just love you, and I'm glad that we did this. And thanks for you know, being awesome and being on my board.
I love you. You're the best. I'm so glad we're in the same town now. It's like the weirdest thing on earth, but also the greatest. And I hate the pandemic that you finally got here and we can't go have a drink at all.
I know.
Someday, yeah. Portia, someday. You're first on the list. You're first on the list to have a drink with.
Awesome.
I adore you. Tom, thanks for having us.
The best.
Hey, thank you. And this has turned out exactly as I thought it would. You two are just remarkable. You are rock stars in your fields. And I can just, all the texts that have been blowing up my phone, patting me on the back for today, all goes to you all. And so thank you so much. I've just put up on the screen, our next event is next Tuesday, featuring two more rock stars, Vicki Nauman and Dick Huey. If you're enjoying this series, folks, please reach out to me and give me recommendations. You know, we're trying to be as broad and as inclusive as possible. As you can tell, you know, bring me ideas. We want to shine a light on cool people doing great things. So thanks to everyone out there. Be safe, support independent venues like the Exit Inn and others in your hometown, and stay safe, wear a mask, and vote on November 3rd. See ya.
Bye.